In this lesson, I'm going to show you how, given a chord symbol, you can deduce which notes should actually be played. So for example, if you see the chord C major, you'd know that you'd have to play C, E, and G. We're going to cover all types of chords, from basic triads to up to 13th chords, and the process is going to involve 4 simple steps. The first is to identify the root, then is to construct the major scale on that root, then figure out which degrees of the scale you should actually use, and then figure out which notes these degrees correspond to. This is best illustrated through example. Let's take, for example, the C minor major 7th chord. Now you might have seen this chord and you know it's made out of the notes C, E flat, G, and B. I'm going to show you how to understand this just looking at the chord's name. So let's start with the first step. Let's identify the root. This is probably the easiest step. This is just the first note in the chord's name. So in the C minor major 7th chord, the root is simply the C note. The second step is to construct the major scale on C. So basically just construct C major. Now if you don't know how to construct major scales, don't worry. There's a previous Piano Quickie lesson that you can watch. It's only a few minutes long, that shows you exactly how to construct major, minor, and diminished scales. So if you don't know, just take a moment of your time to watch that one and come back here. That's really the only prerequisite that you'll need for this lesson. So the C major scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and we're going to repeat it twice, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And we're going to number the notes. So we're going to start with 1 on the root on C, and then start counting up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now when we reach 8, we get back to C. But we're going to keep on counting. We're not going to go back to 1. We're going to keep on counting 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way up to 14. So we're going to have 2 repetitions of the C major scale. So the first and second steps are fairly straightforward. Let me show you how to go through the third and fourth steps. Alright, don't freak out. This chart is a lot simpler than it seems. What we're going to do is we're going to break up the chord into 5 different parts. And each part is going to tell us something about the notes we are going to play. I'm going to keep the C minor major 7th chord as an example. And I'm also going to keep the C major scale on the screen. Now, what are the 5 different parts of the chord name? Well, the first part is the letter, which signifies the root note on which we're going to construct the major scale. In this case, it's C. And this tells us our first degree is going to be C. The second part tells us what to do with the 3rd and 5th degrees. And it can be nothing, a small m, which signifies a minor chord, an aug, which signifies augmented, or dim, which signifies diminished. And each of these can modify the 3rd and 5th degrees in some way. For example, the aug modifier tells you play the 3rd and raised 5th. So by raised I mean take the 5th and go up 1 semitone. The small m, which we have in our case, says play the 3rd and 5th but lower the 3rd. So in our case, the 3rd and 5th are E and G, and the lowered 3rd is E flat. So we know we're going to play E flat and G. The third part of the chart tells us what to do with the 7th degree. So if nothing appears, then the 7th degree, if we're going to play it, will be lowered by 1 semitone, flattened in other words. If there is a match modifier, as is the case with our chord with the C minor major 7, we're going to play the 7th degree as is without raising or lowering it. The fourth part is the number part. So in any chord, most chords will come with a number attached to them, 6, 7, 9, 11, 13. If there's no number, you just end up playing the 1, 3, and 5 degrees. If you see 6, play 1, 3, 5, and 6 degrees of the scale. If you see a 7, play a 1, 3, 5, 7. Then if you see a 9, 11, or 13, just keep on adding odd numbers. So for example, a 13 means play the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, and 13th degrees of the scale. Finally, the 5th part is modifiers. And modifiers are additional instructions for you as the musician for changing particular parts of the chord. In our case, the C minor major 7th chord doesn't have any modifiers. I'm going to give you some examples in a bit of chords that have modifiers. But modifiers can tell you things like add certain degrees. This is the add 2 and add 9 in the table. Lower or raise particular degrees, and so forth. Alright, so let's look at the C minor major 7th chord and use the chart to try and understand which notes we should play. So we see it has a root of C, has a minor modifier, meaning we're going to play the 3rd degree flattened and the 5th degree as is. Has a major modifier, meaning that we're going to play the 7th degree as is. And it has a 7 number at the end, meaning we're going to play the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th degrees. And there are no modifiers. So, looking at the C major scale, we identify the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th degrees, which are C, E, G, and B, and we use the fact that the 3rd has to be lowered by 1 semitone. This is the lowercase m, the minor modifier, from the 2nd column in the table. This gives us the notes C, E flat, G, and B. That's the C minor major 7th chord. Let's take a few more examples to solidify your understanding. Let's look at the C13 sus4 chord. We're going to stay with the C major scale, just to keep things simple for now. And we see that the root is C. So the 1st degree is going to be just C. The 13th number, according to the 4th column in the table, tells us we're going to have to play 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 and 13th degrees of the C major scale, which are C, E, G, B, D, F, and A. However, note that there is no maj modifier, so the 7th degree is going to have to be flattened. So instead of B, we're going to have to play B flat. In addition, the sus4 modifier tells us don't play the 3rd degree, play the 4th degree instead. So instead of E, we're going to play F. So the final notes in our chord will be C, the 1st, F, the 4th, G, 5th, B flat, 7th flat, D, F, and A. Here's a third example, the F11 sharp 9 flat 5 chord. The root here is F, so we're going to have to construct the F major scale, which is made out of the notes F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and back to F, and then repeat it twice, and count the degrees. F is the 1st degree, G is the 2nd, A is the 3rd, and so forth. Now, we don't have any modifiers for the 3rd and 5th. There's no augmented, diminished, or minor modifier. We don't have any modifier for the 7th, so if we do encounter the 7th, we're going to have to flatten it. The 11 number tells us play the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th degrees. But remember, the 7th has to be flattened. And finally, there are two modifiers after the 11 number. And these are sharp 9 and flat 5. And this basically tells us you're going to have to play the 9, but play it sharp. So instead of playing G, which is the 9, play G sharp. Similarly, instead of playing C, which is the 5th degree, play 1 semitone down, play B. So collecting all of this together, we see that the notes out of which F11 sharp 9 flat 5 is made of are F, the 1st, A, the 3rd degree, C, but we're going to have to flatten it because we have a modifier, so B actually. And we don't have a 7th modifier, so E flat. E is the 7th, but we're going to have to flatten it. G sharp. G is the 9th degree, and we're going to have to sharpen it. We're going to have to increase it by 1 semitone because of our modifier. And finally, B flat, which is the 11th degree. Let's do one last example, the F6 add 9 chord. So the F tells us we're on the F major scale and that the root, the first degree, is F. There's no modifier for the 3rd and 5th degrees. The number 6 tells us we're going to play the 1, 3, 5, and 6 degrees of the F major scale, which are F, A, C, and D. There is no modifier for the 7th degree, and if we had to play it, we would flatten it. But we are not going to play the 7th degree. This is what the 6 tells us. Just play the 1, 3, 5, and 6 degrees. Finally, there is a modifier, add 9. This means just add the 9th degree. So for the F major scale, the 9th degree is G. So the final notes in our F6 add 9 chord are F, A, C, D, and G. A few final words about the construction process. First of all, the modifiers. Just a few words about the sus and the add ones. The add simply mean just add this degree if it doesn't already exist. So as we've seen for the F6 add 9, we just added a 9 when we had the add 9 suffix. The sus modifiers modify the 3rd degree. So if you see a sus, you're not going to play the 3rd degree, and you're either going to play the 2nd or 4th degrees instead, depending on whether you have a sus2 or a sus4 modifier. The second thing I'd like to point out is there is one case where this table construction method fails, and that's for diminished 7 chords. If you look at the C diminished 7 chord, it's made out of the notes C, E flat, G flat, and A. So the 7th degree is flattened twice. And this is actually one case the table does not cover. So this is like an exception. You're just going to have to remember that for diminished chords, for diminished 7th and higher chords, play the 1st, flattened 3rd, flattened 5th, and doubly flattened 7th. That's the only exception. That's it. I hope you can actually go forth and construct chords more easily now. One final piece of advice. What I've shown you here is a method for figuring out which notes are to be played when you see a particular chord symbol. But what this method doesn't tell you is in what order should these notes be played. For example, if you have a C major chord, it's made out of the notes C, E, and G. Now you can play C, E, and G as a triad, just one after the other, but you can play C, then a G, and then an E. That's also a C major chord. That's called voicing. So deciding how the different degrees are going to be ordered, and sometimes even which of them can be omitted, that's called chord voicing. And that's a completely different topic, which is covered in several of my other videos, and hopefully in future Piano Quickie installments. So stay tuned for more videos and check out the other harmony videos I have on my channel about chord voicing, and I'll see you next time.